What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is The Flash, Season 7, Episode 4, Central City Strong. So this one was okay up until the very end. Because all the stuff with Abracadabra and his story and what it involves with the crisis and resetting the universe, it was all pretty interesting. I like the setup for it. I like the emotional moment, that they get at the end of it all. It was really well done, and it had a good message in it, talking about, yes, sometimes you deal with trauma, but it's important to not essentially use that trauma as a weapon to be like, or an excuse, honestly, to be like, well, I was hurt, so it's okay if I hurt somebody else, so that way they can suffer like me. Which, unfortunately, a lot of people tend to do anyway, because I don't know, for some reason, it's kind of a typical thing. But yeah, all of that was fine. I was not minding it. Chester's still a little annoying at times, but it was fine. The whole, like, rebuilding of Central City and all of that, and the message at the beginning, and the one reporter, being like, oh, well, that was awesome. And then Joe and Cecile right after, oh, yeah, the Flash said some great stuff. All of that, it is what it is. There is that. I like to call it the CW writing, where it feels like they have to really hammer in how powerful something is by having other people in the show say how powerful it is, or amazing something is, or amazing someone is. I don't know why this became a thing, but it feels like, especially in the CW, is where I see it. Because for some reason, the writers think, well, if somebody is in the show is saying it, that means the audience will believe it too. And what it feels like is almost like a parent, like a parent who is essentially talking about their kid and trying to be super positive about it. Like, did you see my kid do this? This was amazing. It was great. It was so fantastic. Let me tell you how fantastic. The more you say it, the less believable it sounds. So, unfortunately, that's just something that I've gotten used to. So I just kind of roll my eyes at this point whenever I see it. But especially at the beginning is really where I felt that writing on full show. But anyways, so all the stuff though after that with Abracadabra was interesting. And then all of a sudden they have that part at the end with the weird Hulk-like creature. First of all, what? Second of all, CGI? Third of all, what? I mean, because they seem to be showing the lightning bolts after he destroyed the machine, the 4 separate lightning bolts. So I'm thinking at some point we're going to see these different speedsters show up. 4 separate ones. I figured, and I wasn't sure exactly how that was going to play in. Whether maybe some would be good, some would be evil. I don't know, but I figured that would be the next storyline we would see is, hey, there's other speedsters now because you destroyed the artificial speed force, and because the artificial speed force seemed to be a bad thing, we saw how it affected Barry and how it turned him into almost more of a robot than a human. I don't know, there was something weird about the fact that happened, and then the next thing that comes out of nowhere that seems to be continuing on is big giant CGI Hulk-like creature attacks and then nearly kills Barry and then runs away because of some weird ringing noise. So random. Like, what just happened? So yeah, I don't know. It's very odd. The fact that it seemingly killed Abracadabra. Here's the thing: he may not be dead because sometimes with these characters you think like Mysterio. How many times does it look like Mysterio has died, then he wasn't actually dead? But I don't know. It just seemed very weird that he tried to use the bomb. Bomb was destroyed. And he's like, well, what about this? And then she just, or I don't know. It looked like a she. It could have been a he. Obviously, it's hard to tell. I'll just call it an it for now because it seems to just be a monster. But it just smacks him, and then he's just dead. I would figure he would have a clone. He talks about the art of distraction. Is that what he... Misdirection. There we go. It talks about the whole misdirection thing, so I thought he was going to do something like that where it attacks him, but that it's not actually him and he hits it from behind or something along those lines. But he didn't do any of that. He just, what about this? Are you gonna hit me now? Okay, here we go. Duh. What? He's fast enough to stop a speedster from stopping him, but then this giant hulking creature attacks him, and he's too slow to do anything about that? What? And I know the thing is fast because obviously it caught Flash before he could run away. But still, it's just very odd. And yeah, again, just it runs away. It seems to be setting up for more this season. I don't. Maybe it will tie into whatever Barry did that night, but at the moment, it was a very odd inclusion to just have it come in out of nowhere. The other thing that I will say, kind of odd as well, is the new Argus director or whatever, seems to be a robot. And it's funny because Cisco, I feel like he's had enough experience talking to an AI program, he would know that this Argus director responding to him sounds almost exactly like what a computer program would say. Like, I have never once held title of chief. Response not recognized. Like, I don't know. It didn't say that, but it definitely seems like this guy was a robot pretending to be human or something along those lines. But Cisco's just like, oh yeah, Mr. Literal over here. Like, dude, it's one thing if you're talking, like Drax, obviously from Guardians, takes everything literally, but he doesn't speak like a robot. This guy was speaking as if he was responding directly to what Cisco was saying, but the responses were programmed based on what was said. I don't know. It's just another very odd moment. And I don't know if that's going to come back later with Argus. Maybe something that we'll see in. I don't know. Arrow's the only one that dealt with Argus most of the time, like with Diggle's wife being the director. So I don't think Supergirl ever deals with Argus, and Legends most of the time they're dealing with different time periods. So I don't think they would deal with Argus either. Maybe Batwoman, but I doubt it. I don't know. But anyways, the final thing is of course Caitlin and Killer Frost being split. Okay, I don't know. Like, this happening just sort of came out of nowhere, and I don't get it. Hopefully they have a good explanation for it, but some of this stuff just feels like it's just sort of happening right now. So yeah, I'm a little tired, but got 2 more episodes to get through, so let's do it. On to the next one. I'll see you there. And now episode 5, Fear Me. So at least we now have a little bit of an explanation as to what Fuerza and Psyche are involved with. Because, again, I was wondering about the lightning strikes that were heading out in all the different directions and stuff like that. And apparently, somehow they did create these new threats. I don't know exactly how that is, because you would think lightning strikes going around and hitting random people would give them speed abilities and maybe make more speedsters, but instead for some reason it created a super like hulked out person, somebody who could somehow manipulate people's fears and make them live their worst nightmares. And I wonder if maybe this Speed Force that looks like Nora, I wonder if somehow that was another one of the ones that was created. I don't know. It's very odd, and I hope they have a good explanation, or at least one that I can buy, because at the moment I'm sitting here going, I don't feel like Speed Force Lightning should have created people with these sorts of powers, because these powers do not seem speed related at all. Like if there were different aspects, like somebody who could, I don't know, vibrate or create vibrations or something like that. Somebody who could, I don't know, phase through stuff. Somebody who has like electric power. I don't know. It's just something that makes more sense with speed. But this all just seems very random as far as what abilities they've gotten. But anyways, overall it was a fine episode. I mean, there's not really a whole lot to talk about. Cecile definitely got a little bit more of a spotlight in this one because of her abilities, which does make sense since this is a guy who can give people their worst fears, and she is somebody who can project different kinds of emotions and stuff like that. So yeah, it was fine for her. I will say something is kind of funny to me though, that essentially this guy, his ability creates people's worst fear and tricks their brain into thinking that it's real, so much so to the point where their body will actually somehow injure itself and bleed if they get stabbed. But all that makes me think of is because that one, the guards, which, by the way, what are the crows doing there? I thought they were a Gotham City thing, and somehow they're in Central City. But the two guards that saw like the giant kaiju monster, like if somehow the kaiju actually did manage to like grab them or even eat them, would their body start digesting itself? Like would that at what point, if the monster stepped on them, would their body crush itself because that's what the mind is telling them is happening to? I don't know. Like I know the mind is very powerful and it can convince the body of certain things that it can be very harmful even if those things are not actually happening to the body. But the fact that it made Barry bleed makes me think that any wound that they feel becomes real. And there are certain wounds that are involved with a giant kaiju that I'm thinking, how would the mind make the body do that? But anyways, just little weird pockets of thought that my brain went down. The stuff with Killer Frost, I mean, it almost a little too coincidental that she saw herself being arrested and Caitlin being the one that turned her in right before somebody shows up wanting to arrest her. I don't know, just is that a little too coincidental, writers? Couldn't you, I don't know, maybe just have this be thrown in there at some point, and then maybe later on down the season, then the idea of her getting arrested is brought up, or I don't know. Somehow somebody sees her and she gets arrested for that. Just something a little bit more believable than she has a vision of her being arrested and that's her worst fear. And in the same episode is when somebody shows up is like, all right, we're finally going to prosecute Killer Frost. And the only reason I said prosecute instead of arrest is because I saw one of the episode titles later on down the season is The People versus Killer Frost. So I know she's going to go to court at some point. But I don't know. It just the stupid stuff that writers will do to seem clever when in reality it's very obvious that they're just pushing all of this stuff to happen at the same time coincidentally to make it seem, ooh, it's so meaningful. It feels forced is what it is. So I think that's about it though. So on to the final of these 3 episodes. I'll see you there. And finally, episode 6, the one with the 90s. You could have just thrown that in there anywhere to justify that title. But now, you just... The one with the 90s, guys, like Friends, because Friends was in the 90s, right? Right? Too bad we're not going to throw a single Friends reference in there as far as I can tell. So, anyways, just minor gripe. But the stuff with Chester and Cisco back in the past, it was fine. Chester, like I've said before, whenever he's not being all goofy and silly and stuff, he's a fine actor. Does a good job with the more emotional scenes. I will say though, the amount of times it feels like that we've had to deal with supervillains this season by talking them down, like trying to reason with them. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not saying I always want every villain to be just beat up and that's how you always win the day. However, I also don't want every battle to end with, okay, well, we got to try to reason with this bad guy and try to make them see, the error of their ways, because it's also not as fun either. So I feel like there's not been a good mixture. It's been mostly, let's reason with them first, and then only a couple times has it been, all right, let's actually fight this time. So, and I know, obviously, Chester and Cisco are not going to be able to fight with a time god, basically, but it's still getting a little overdone. Like, literally 2 episodes ago, we had the Flash basically giving a speech to Abracadabra to talk him down. In the episode before that one, we had the Flash and Iris giving a speech to Ava to talk her down. So it's becoming overdone, a little too much. And honestly, it is something, I mean, this show does typically have the Flash team trying to be a lot more reasonable, and it's fine for a few of them, but I don't know. At some point, especially 7 seasons of this, at some point it's going to get old, and I feel like it's gotten old at this point. So, but like I said, everything with Chester was fine. Finding out about his dad, finding out about what happened with his dad. I mean, all those scenes were fine. I really like the scene where we find out that his dad was actually helping him, tossing the one thing in the trash for him. So that way he learned some of the skills that he has now. And basically everything his dad was doing was trying to help his son have a better life. And while, there is the argument to be made, well, wouldn't your son prefer more time spent with you rather than you trying to build a better life for him? It's kind of up in the air. Some people will look at this and say, look at how much he did to help Chester get to where he is now. Some people will look at the fact that Chester didn't get to know him very well as a kid and say, well, look at how his kid thinks of him because he wasn't always there for him. So it's a very, very much a balancing act, but it still was a nice scene whenever Chester realized a lot of what he did for him as a kid to help him get to be the person he is today. It's a nice message, nice moment. And the message overall, not letting your life be defined by your past, it's also a good message too. So overall, it was fine. The stuff with Iris and the Speed Force, I don't really get it. I don't really understand why we had these scenes. And even the scene at the end, whenever she invites the Speed Force over to stay with them, and Barry is giving them a look like he doesn't trust her, or I don't know. The look was a little odd. It was hard to read. I'm not really sure if he's just untrustworthy of her or if he's worried about having somebody who looks like his mom around. Because Iris seemed to think that having the Speed Force look like his mom is actually a nice moment for him because it helps him remember those times. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe he actually is upset by the fact that, yeah, you look like my mom, but you're not my mom. I don't know. Not really sure what they're trying to imply with that look at the end, and I feel like that's normally I'm able to tell sort of what everybody's thinking in this show. It feels like more recently there have been moments where the facial expressions aren't quite as clear as I think they should be. So I don't know, just a tiny little thing. Obviously, Killer Frost at the end, basically saying, "No, I'm not gonna just sit here and do nothing. Who cares about this woman who's trying to arrest me?" And probably why she ends up in court later on this season. I guess just talking about the forces in general. So there were 4 beams that split. So I'm thinking that we now have the 4 forces that are out there. We have the Speed Force. I guess Cisco named all of them. We have the Strength Force with Fuerza. We have the Sage Force with Psych. Now we have he called it the Still Force. I would call it like the Time Temporal Force or something like that. But I know he's going for the S alliteration theme. So, but I don't know. It still seems a little odd. I don't know why specifically strength, time, and fear, mind. I don't know. Like speed, strength, time, and fear. I don't know how those 4 connect. It seems like an odd things to make all these different forces to be. So I'm not really sure what they're going with here. Because I thought it was all going to be connected to the fact, Barry destroyed the artificial Speed Force. That's what created it. So I figured that people would get powers connected to speed, but they clearly didn't. The time one is the closest that we've seen connected to speed. Everything else is something completely different. But if it's not the case that they're all connected to speed, then why specifically? What do these 4 things combined create? Speed and strength and time and mental stuff. I don't know. Like I've been racking my brain trying to figure out what these 4 things are supposed to represent, and I honestly cannot tell you. Because I think about 5 senses maybe, but that doesn't make sense because sight. None of them are sight, smell. None of them are so. Nothing to do with 5 senses. Nothing to do with like what the human psyche is composed of. The mental, the soul, the physical. Like even that doesn't really make any sense. So I'm not. Maybe the different dimensions. No, that doesn't make... That's the thing. I don't know where they've gotten these four forces from. So I hope they have an explanation for why this is the way that it is, but I don't think they do. I don't know. I truly don't know, and it's a little concerning that it feels like they sort of just wrote these forces to be whatever they wanted it to be. You know, oh, well, we want a hulking type character, so we'll have that in there. And then we'll have one that can control time, because that's fun. And we'll have one that can alter people's fear, because, you know, Scarecrow doesn't exist in this Flash. So, I don't know. I'm a little frustrated with it just because it feels like it is very random. It doesn't feel very focused. And that's not... I guess, I mean, last season with the Flash was kind of that way, but it's not what I want to see with the Flash. I want to see the Flash be focused. I want to see the Flash have good writing and really feel like it's all connected well. And I don't feel like it's doing that at the moment. So, but all in all, this was a fine episode individually. Some decent moments, some odd moments, but overall it's okay. So that's it for me, though. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on these 3 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe to future Flash reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.